What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from The Quartering. I hope you're having a wonderful day. I continue to cover all the latest Cyberpunk 2077 news, along with any other major gaming news here, along with Hollywood news, YouTube news, tech censorship, a wide variety of other issues. Make today the day you smash that red subscribe button down below so we can hit 1 million by the end of the year. Now, streamers, particularly Shroud, hoping the game dies after just 30 days. That's not a very good thing to say about Cyberpunk 2077, especially with a gigantic multiplayer mode planned and future DLC. But what did he really mean? Obviously, the media picked up on this, but we know that the media loves their headlines. We'll have to take a look into that. Before we do so, some more information around Cyberpunk 2077. Of course, 2 hours ago, PC Gamer, which is a trash website, published how long Cyberpunk 2077 will take you based on what we heard. We've already heard numbers in the 165 to 170 hours range if you play slow, but now we've got more data. We do know that the main story in Cyberpunk 2077 is slightly shorter than The Witcher 3, because we have a lot of complaints about The Witcher 3's main story just being too long. I would never complain about that, but I guess. Based on the internal player statistics, Mills says that a lot of players played tons of The Witcher 3, but tremendous numbers of people never made it to the end. He goes on to clarify that while the main story is shorter, there will still be a lot to do outside the main quest. How long to beat puts average Witcher 3 player focused on the main quest at 51.5 hours, which is still pretty dang long. If, quote, tremendous amounts of players never saw the end, I'd wager they shortened it considerably to about 30-hour main campaign. Again, it's not for a lack of stuff to do, because there are some developer tweets. Cyberpunk is still going to be an absolute time eater, assuming you see and do it all. If you're a completionist, okay? QA lead tells us exactly how long Cyberpunk 2077 completionist playthrough will take, but we can extrapolate a bit. They tweeted that the current playthrough clocked in at 175 hours and is still going, eventually clarifying that this is on Cyberpunk's hardest difficulty as a slow, meticulous, stealth-based character, he's probably taking his sweet time looking for bugs too. Doesn't mean everyone's going to easily get 175 hours or more out of Cyberpunk 2077 in a single playthrough, but we now know that it is technically possible if somebody's playing like a QA tester. Now, they're also throwing shade at Cyberpunk's main protagonist, saying that Cyberpunk's 2077's protagonist is missing what made Witcher 3's Geralt great. CD Projekt Red's last protagonist, Geralt, was a bit of a grump, but is Cyberpunk 2077's V missing the charming kindness he hid beneath the surface? The protagonist in Cyberpunk 2077 is drawing comparisons to Geralt from the Witcher series, and they're not favorable. V, the player character of CD Projekt Red's newest game, is an edgy grump, much like the studio's last protagonist. Unfortunately, V appears to be missing the vital component of Geralt's gruff personality. There's no denying that Geralt is a little rough around the edges. The monster-hunting mutant is prone to bar fights and brooding as he is to heroism, but it bears pointing out that the Butcher of Blaviken's cynical, selfish streak is the result of his enduring oppression as a member of the Witcher cast, which makes Geralt a great protagonist, and is that his mistreatment also leads to a genuine concern for the downtrodden. Of course, depending on the backstory the player chooses, V can be an outcast. But Cyberpunk 2077's trailers have not yet shown V's misfortunes cause them to be particularly heroic or kind towards others who are down on their luck. Simply put, their lack of sympathy makes it hard for them to sympathize with. But this isn't based on any gameplay. You're just basing it on trailers. Judging from trailers, V is a little more pushy. The character bosses around friends, allies, cyberpunk gang members, service workers, and even computers. Nearly every line of dialogue V utters is a threat demand or demand backed up with a threat. The masculine V's voice acting is also rather grating. Lines like "find a spot close to the bar" or "as close as you can, F procedures" are hardly Shakespearean, but when delivered with a Duke Nukem-esque level of attempted BA, they land they need to land well above or else devolve into cringe-inducing failed camp, and no amount of voice acting skill can sell V's mocking others' accents or incessantly demeaning those around him. So you wrote an article about V being a meanie. Why is he such a jerk? However, much of his crassness can be explained by the so-called 3 rules of Cyberpunk. CD Projekt Red. So you're saying there's a lore reason for it, and you still wrote an article to whine about it. This is why people like coming to my channel, because I'll get through 10 garbage articles while they're just on, relieving themselves, or they're driving home from work, or they're playing some World of Warcraft. And I appreciate you listening. I know a lot of you just listen to the videos. If you're listening, please take just one moment right now to click that red subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. Now, the 3 roles it turns in Pondsmith's satirical games drew inspiration from existing sci-fi stories. The 3 rules of Cyberpunk are style over substance, attitude is everything, and live on the edge. Essentially, characters in Cyberpunk series are brash, crude rebels who are concerned with looking cool. So he's perfect, right? Now, Geralt is a subversively grouchy hero, benefiting from his twisted fairy tale setting of the Witcher series, while V is a vulgar rogue benefiting from their own dystopian setting. But Geralt's sincere concern for those around them, especially fellow outcasts, make him far more likable. But this is coming from somebody who hasn't even played the game. You're literally basing this entire thing, his entire character, off a few trailers. You don't know what the storylines are. You're not even you've got zero gameplay. You have no context to say that he's worse than Geralt. And by the way, Geralt is amazing, and it's entirely possible V won't be as memorable as Geralt, but only time will tell. I mean, Witcher 3's been out forever. It's even got its own TV series. I would be shocked if Cyberpunk 2077 didn't get the same. Now, also, Cyberpunk 2077's multiplayer is not just a mode, it's a standalone product. So this is kind of like almost like you see with Warzone for Call of Duty. It'll be a way to get people into the story mode, and people will be able to play even if they don't own the entire game, is what I'm guessing. CD Projekt Red has revealed more information about the multiplayer. Joint CEO at CD Projekt Red, Adam Kaczynski, explained that the studio's latest earnings briefing that calling the multiplayer facet of the game mode is in fact something of a misnomer. According to them, CD Projekt Red is actually viewing multiplayer as a standalone product. So we don't call it modes, he stated during earnings call. It's a separate, dedicated production, a big production. We think about it as a standalone product. The multiplayer will be part of the game. Multiplayer part of the game will be connected to the single-player release, but operate individually, with a separate team working on providing ongoing content for the multiplayer mode. We know that multiplayer side started out as a concept exploration and later entered into full development. I mean, what CD Projekt Red really, really, really wants is Grand Theft Auto 5. I mean, I don't even remember the campaign of GTA 5. In fact, the only reason I have the game is I think Epic Games made it free for a month. But it's making billions in online. I should really try it out. The fact that you haven't heard anything about Cyberpunk 2077 multiplayer yet is just also by design, with the studio wanting to keep quiet about the mode until people have had a chance to enjoy what the main game has to offer. We've previously heard that the multiplayer portion of the game is unlikely to arrive in 2021, so expect the news to drip quite slowly on this one. I would be willing to bet probably late 2021, but you've got to balance it, right? I would think you'd want to release the multiplayer about the time you've saturated the market. Pulling people back in unless they really loved your game is going to be difficult to do. So I would like to see it available, while, the bulk of people are playing it. And by the way, that won't be this Christmas. The PC units, probably much smaller than console, and a lot of people will want to wait for the next-gen consoles. But good news about that, Cyberpunk 2077 is actually allowing players bring game saves forward to the PS5 and Xbox Series X, meaning you can enjoy the game on your current gen right now and move up to your next gen when you finally get it. Players who start Cyberpunk 2077 on a PS4 or Xbox One will be able to continue playing on a 5 or an Xbox Series X when they're ready. CD Projekt Red made the process for migrating saved games clear in a pair of instructional posted November 27th. To migrate a save game, CD Projekt Red, there are 3 different options. You can upload your existing save game into a cloud. You can transfer the data on your console via local area network, either wired or wireless. Finally, you can also make the move using an external storage drive. For Xbox players moving the Xbox One to the Series X, everything will happen seamlessly via the new console's smart delivery feature. On to what people are saying now. Will Ciri from The Witcher be in Cyberpunk 2077? All signs point to maybe. This is more fan speculation. I suppose there are some pretty wild cameos, this article writes, in Cyberpunk 2077 when I played it for my 15-hour preview, including famous game designer and the voice of a character from a well-known PC game. So maybe we'll see Ciri leaping around with a sword swiping up cyber gangsters and corporate goons. I guess it all depends on where the rest of the Cyberpunk team were able to convince Badowski that it would be a good idea after all. Now we're starting to see some negative seeming headlines. That's the only thing I'm scared of. Shroud worried about this Cyberpunk 2077 feature. If everything goes as planned, Cyberpunk will hit stores on December 10th. Gamers will be eagerly waiting for the game for 7 years. Time and again, Shroud has been vocal about his expectations for the game. In a recent video on his second channel, Shroudy Rowdy, the streamer reviewed Cyberpunk 2077 gameplay on Xbox One and Series X. It's going to be great, but I really want to know if they're actually going to revolutionize next gen. We'll see. Now, I think what he means is simply that, yeah, we know next gen's going to look better, but is it going to feel like a totally different experience? And that's, I think, what he's alluding to. Even though Shroud is confident that Cyberpunk 2077 will be brilliant, he expresses concerns regarding the game's combat, apparently the only thing that worries him. The only thing I'm worrying about is I hope the combat's good. This won't be a good visual representation because it's on the controller, but I hope that the combat's decent. That's the only thing I'm worried about. I think that they'll get everything else right, but combat is hard to nail, said Shroud while watching Cyberpunk 2077's Xbox gameplay. He also compared the Xbox One X and Series X. The specific transition showcased the accurate graphical performance distinction between the two. The lack of details and reflection was clearly visible on the Xbox One X, but running the game at a higher FPS on both consoles would have highlighted the variations. To say the least, Shroud is hyped. Good for Shroud. But now here's another article. I hope it dies in a month. Shroud shares his thoughts on Cyberpunk 2077. What? What? He scrutinized the developer's claims that Cyberpunk 2077 represents the next level of gaming. Moreover, Shroud ended up admitting that he hoped the game died within a month as he doesn't want to play a single-player game for too long. The incessant delays that Cyberpunk 2077 has seen has been criticized by gamers worldwide, the latest 21-day postponement. However, Shroud did not appear too angry and admitted that his reaction would likely depend on the game's quality. I've seen the actual quote. He says, I'm excited to see what their definition of next gen is. That's what I'm excited for. Yeah, the game is going to be really cool, but I really want to know whether they are actually going to revolutionize and be truly next gen. We will see. They're going to delay it against Cyberpunk. Will it die in a month? I hope so. I hope it's not larger than a month. It's a single player game. I don't want to be spending my whole life in here. I want to be spending just enough time and then get out. So that's where the article's coming from. I mean, I don't think he means he wants the game to die in a month. Also, Shroud, there's a huge multiplayer facet of the game. And you know what? If you don't this is one thing I understand why Twitch streamers do it, but it's a risk, right? Why would you even play a game that you don't want to play? I mean, you clearly don't like single-player games, so why even play them? I suppose there's an element of having to, which is why I don't regret not being a streamer, because then I can play the games I want to and not have to worry about what's going to be popular on Twitch at the time. Well, I hope the game lasts much longer than a month, especially for somebody that only gets to play a few hours a week. I've got my Xbox ready to go. I've got my PlayStation ready to go. And I've got my PC ready to go, which is where I'm going to play Cyberpunk 2077. I hope it lives on in the same vein as Grand Theft Auto 5, getting long-term updates and a massive multiplayer option that I'm hoping to really get into. I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll talk to you again real soon.